Hello, and thank you for joining us on another Skillsminer podcast. In this episode, we visit the West Midlands to speak to Dr Fiona Aldridge about her experience there as Head of Insight and Intelligence. We hear about her challenges, her own career, and how the skills need is multifaceted. We hope you enjoy listening. Hi, and welcome to another Skillsminer podcast. And today I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Fiona Aldridge, who is the Head of Insight and Intelligence for the West Midlands Combined Authority. I knew I'd stumble over my first words because it seems to be a pattern. But welcome, Fiona. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Good. So, a little bit about your role that you do at West Midlands. We're just trying to find out a little bit more about the skills space, the insights that people have. And it sounds like your job is the perfect job to start explaining to us a little bit more about the kind of things that you do at West Midlands. So do you want to talk us through a little more about what your role is there?
Absolutely. So I work in a directorate that covers employment, skills, health and communities. And that's really important because the challenges that we face in the West Midlands, but elsewhere in the country as well, that there aren't simple solutions to some persistent challenges. And actually thinking about how you bring together all of those levers to get over some of the national policy silos is really important. So what does it look like to bring all those things together in the West Midlands to make the most of our opportunities and tackle our challenges? And I manage a small team within that directorate that looks at the data, the research and the evidence to think about what we do with the levers of devolution that we have. So really trying to understand what are the challenges in the West Midlands, where does it affect, who does it affect, and then what should we be doing with our funding, with our policy, with our strategy to tackle them? And then an additional role for me is about engagement with central government. What else do we need as part of devolution, as part of working with central government to push even further into those challenges?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's very, very diverse and tricky as well when there's so many voices, so many actors and stakeholders across lots of other smaller units, not only even in the combined local authority, but in each one of the respective local authorities as well. So how did you actually even get into this position in the first place, Fiona? What's your background?
Well, I come from the West Midlands originally.
Great.
And I think it's always been a sort of ambition of mine to think about how I can sort of give back to the place that I came from. But I spent most of my career at Learning and Work Institutes, a sort of research policy organisation that focuses on lifelong learning, skills and employment. And actually lots of my work was working with the Department for Education, thinking about national level policy. The exciting thing about the West Midlands is being able to put some of that into practice. So instead of just giving advice to ministers and big national infrastructure and organisations, to actually have a go at putting some of this into practice. The West Midlands had and has a reputation for being innovative and creative about wanting to tackle some of those challenges which are really stark in the region, but a kind of energy and enthusiasm to do something about them. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of roll my sleeves up and think about what could be done. And it's been really exciting.
That's
I love
fantastic. And I love the journey as well, from looking at data, looking at intelligence, and then actual real on the ground making a difference and using that to inform policy, but actually the operational aspects of what goes on in our communities. You know, I always think about your own journey, your transferable skills. What do you think have been the greatest things that you've pulled through from your earlier parts of your career to where you are now? You know, like the evolution of your own skills. That's interesting for people.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, I mean, some of it is just, I suppose, working in lifelong learning and skills for 20 or so years means that I've seen lots of things come and go. I've seen lots of things tried. I've been able to be part of that. And so it's amazing what you find out, after all those years of working in an area. So a lot of it is what I know. It's who I know. It's the connections I have with other organisations. I suppose in terms of skills that I have, I think it's often about asking really good questions, being inquisitive, being curious, asking them of the right people. So it's really easy to jump into the data, but the insight from that data often comes from people, from our training providers, our colleges that are delivering, from the organisations working, say, with our young people, from residents themselves, and being able to put all of that together. I suppose if I've got a core skill, it's about being able to take all those different things and make connections, and then being able to creatively put that back out and say, what else can we do? I think in this role, being able to manage and lead people has been really critical as well. A regional role, we're a strategic body in the region. We've got so many partners, we can't do anything without them. And so being able to harness the creativity and abilities of staff and partners in the region has been a really great way of helping us move forward.
So that's fascinating to think of as well, isn't it? So you're gathering your toolkit of your own skills, your own sort of vast and varied experience, and then bringing it to play in your new role. And when you look at that combined authority, how many authorities is it that you have in
So
West Midlands?
Seven. So it's not
Seven.
the size of the West Midlands region. It's smaller. Obviously, it has Birmingham right in the middle, which is the biggest local authority in Europe, and then 6 others around it. So it's got that kind of critical size to be able to do some really creative things. But I suppose what I have learned is that actually problems can be really hyper local as well, and that local authority is too big. It's getting into those wards, into those communities where the challenges can be really different, and therefore the solution's different. And it's really easy to think, oh, I know what that looks like. I know what the answer would be. And when you get into those communities and have conversations and really explore, then you often find something very different. And that's been really interesting. And I've loved that bit of the job.
Have you any examples of some of those things that have kind of come down from that macro level to that micro level for you at West Midlands, that you think, we thought it worked over here, but actually it's very different?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're working on at the minute is, so we have a new mayor, and his priority is around tackling youth unemployment. Across the region. It's going up. There's some real challenges around the level of skills young people are coming out, but also the opportunities within businesses. But we thought we got a problem, that the data seems to be kind of spread across the region. But when we looked at specific wards, actually the figures are 2x, 3x that you see in other places. And when you look at the characteristics of those young people and the opportunities available to them, the sorts of infrastructure that you might say, oh, the solution lies in this, might not be there in that place. And then it's very different things. And of course, skills is then only part of the answer. It's not that it doesn't have a role to play, but just giving people more skills is not going to, in itself, sort those problems. We also need jobs for young people too. We need to make sure there's right transport links, that they've got stable housing, that they feel safe in moving around the region. And it becomes much more complicated than a national policy, however well designed, could ever be. And that's where I think the persistent challenges are. But for us, I guess it's where we can make most difference if we get that right.
Yeah, we've touched on this with a couple of podcasts that we've done around place. Actually, place is really important, and you can't kind of just paste on a policy and think it will apply. And although you can look at this economies of scale in approaches and how do we do stuff, we can learn from one and learn from another, you actually do have to look at the context with which you're hoping to make some sort of change. So it's just really interesting to hear you sort of validating that, because we've heard that from a couple of other people as well, Fiona. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and for me, it's the potential of devolution, because if you pull that out to a national scale, which is so much more bigger and so much more complex, the idea that you can create a national policy that will just sort things, it just feels, it's clearly not going to work in that way. So what do we need to do nationally? And then what can we test in different places for different people in different circumstances? Let's kind of test and learn, so that we don't have to have big sweeping policy changes, but we can work out what works in some places, think about principles, think about where else it might work. And I think it's more incremental. It's probably there's less to announce, but I think we could make a real difference that way.
Building blocks towards that change, and critically data playing a huge role in that. I think I have been really shocked by the NEETs problem round about young people finding their way back into education, employment opportunities. And I wonder if we've still got challenges round about what's happened as a post-pandemic kind of wave of now those children who had to not be in school and were home educated at those times, and now they're entering the labour market at those next steps, we've got a little bit of ground to make up on what the next steps are on their own career ladder, and that's all the policies that we made back then for even devolution has to change and adapt to all of that.
Absolutely, and it's multifaceted again. So there's a thing about there's something about attainment. So the GCSE results came out a couple of weeks ago. Actually the achievement rate. So there's some great stories. Loads of individuals worked hard and done well, but as a region, we've got really low levels of attainment at GCSE maths and English at level 4 and above. So just under half of our young people haven't got those qualifications that they then need to do an apprenticeship or a T-level or get a good job or go on to the next courses. And so we're cutting off their ability to succeed before they've even started. And that's half of our young people. There's so many reasons why. Some of that is about what will have happened in COVID. Some of it will be about kind of the poverty in which some of their families find themselves, and how can you focus on school when you're not warm and safe and all those sorts of things. So lots of challenges there. And then of course we're thinking about getting them into work. So how do we make sure that those jobs support them as well, and they're prepared and supported to move into the labour market, and employers know how to support them and develop them as well. So lots of challenges, but we can't afford not to get it right. These are people's life chances, so we just have to do better.
I saw you did something at WMCA about, was it about resits? What were you doing about GCSE resits?
Well, we're hoping that we'll be able to really help government thinking about English and maths, because we have so many young people who haven't got the right English and maths grades at 16. Of course, there's a resit policy, and we then spend a lot of money for people aged 19 plus doing their English and maths. But how we do that well is really important. But what I would say is our funding kicks in at 19. We can help lots of individuals, but by 19, so much has already been set. And one of the things we're trying to talk to government about is what role can we play before 19? Because it is harder, it's more expensive to do things at that stage, where if we can do things earlier, we've got a better chance of succeeding and better chance of getting those young people started well. So the Mayor has a youth plan. We're really hoping that English and maths will be part of that, but there's so many other aspects we want to work on as well.
Finding teachers as well, it's such a challenge, a real challenge. I keep looking to see how can industry supplement some of that of what we're doing in schools, and even if it's about, what does it look like in their industry? It's inspiring young people to attain in that way, and then also encouraging people to come back into the education sector too. I think that for me was a huge thing. Even if I look back 10 years ago, I went back into education at that time, and I really enjoyed my time. I felt as if I had a lot to bring, a lot of life experience, and the broader picture was with me as well at that time. So I would really be encouraging lots of people, if they were thinking about how to give back right now, is to think about maybe a role in education too, So
absolutely, and schools, of course, have got a teacher shortage, and government's got a commitment there. But in further education, where teachers are paid even less than in schools, it's an even more critical issue. We've got particular trades and technical skills where we really want to invest for the region. We know there are jobs, we know there are good jobs. But actually, unless you've got the teaching workforce to be able to develop those skills in the young people, then you can't do that. And actually, the more in demand those skills become, the more it is easier for people to get a really well-paying job outside of FE, and therefore harder to attract them into FE. So there are other things you can think about, as you say, wanting to give back, but actually there's a kind of scale issue that we're going to have to think about more creatively. I suppose at the Combined Authority, we know we're a funder of skills, but we're also a strategic body, and therefore thinking about the system, thinking about workforce, thinking about leadership, those sorts of things are on our agenda too. Really challenging, but we're hoping that working with our colleges, working with our employers, with our universities, we'll be able to make some inroads on that.
And what are the key areas there that you're seeing sort of for economic development? Have you got sort of priority areas? Because we're finding quite a lot in construction, built environment space, health and social care, and digital. What are the sort of priorities you think for WMCA?
Yeah, so in a region as big as CA, you've got almost every
The
job,
variety,
almost every sector. So the great thing is we don't have to create narrow opportunities as a whole economy's worth. We have spent quite a lot of money, a lot of our investment thinking about construction, sometimes tied to those big projects like HS2. Lots of demand around electrical at the moment, thinking about some of the new developments around EV, for example, and the sort of move to green. We obviously have lots of jobs in things like health and social care, some of those kind of big foundational sectors. But we've done a piece of work which is called Plan for Growth, and it identifies 8 cluster areas where we think there's most potential for economic and employment growth in the region. They're often quite small parts of the economy at the minute, but we think it's where the wealth will come in the region. So really trying to line up behind that. So what's a skills investment? How do we support businesses? How do we get innovation and R&D investment, trying to come behind those so that we give the West Midlands the best chance of economic success, which actually then translates into success and opportunity for people who live in the region.
Rising growth, which is great. And you know, how do you envisage that rolling out? How long do these things kind of take? Is that a next 5-year plan? Is it part of a 3-year plan that you're going through at this moment in time?
So the mayors, of which we have one, have been asked to write regional economic plans that will form into an industrial strategy. And of course, changing your economy is a long-term project. But of course, if someone wants a job now or wants to retrain or has been made redundant, that's also a short-term piece as well. So the challenge is you have to do everything. So you have to think about making sure that if you hadn't had the chance to get that good basic education in school, you've got a chance to do it as an adult. There's training that's linked into the jobs that are available right now. And then there's that kind of longer term transition as the economy changes to make sure we've got the right skills on offer both for our young people and for our adults. So it's like having to do everything all at the same time.
I know.
Yeah, when we spoke last week, I was just going to say, when we spoke last week to Pete Osborne, was talking about 3 different sorts of roles. We were talking about brand new roles that we've not done before, changing roles, and then transition roles, roles that will only be around for a while. And then you'll move on again. So there's going to be, you know, in the changes that we have around construction, big projects, and also energy, and there are things that are only going to be a role for a period of time. As well. So it's sort of tying that picture and this ladder to skills all together is quite complex, really.
Absolutely. And there's something about replacement demand as well. So there are some jobs in the region that are clearly declining. There are fewer opportunities, but given the aging workforce, even though we're saying we need less of them, actually we still need some of them now because people are retiring. And so you have to balance that kind of this is growing and this is shiny with this is just what needs doing. And this is a sector that might be declining, but there are jobs still now. And so we rely quite a lot on labour market information, on talking to employers, on talking to our training providers and being able to pull together all that insight and data and research from everywhere to try and create a picture that will help us try things. I'm not sure data in itself ever says, this is the answer, go and do it. But it gives us space to say, could it be this? Shall we try it? Let's kind of try fast, fail fast, or win fast, and then see how we can change the offer to meet the needs in front of us.
Again,
that's really interesting that you're being quite agile with that, aren't you?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's just like us in tech, you know, we're going to look at the data that we have, informing what our next steps are on our roadmap, and the supply and demand of that data is incredible. And, you know, we've quickly got to a stage where we really believe it's about the quality of data that you have, but that can only come from the engagement that you have with all the actors, all the stakeholders across the region. You know, it's accountability for that as well. You know, I think that plays a big part in that. My goodness, and what's been, and you know, this is always an interesting kind of question that we have. What do you think has been the best piece of advice that you've had in your career?
I've had lots of advice in my career. Some of it good, some of it not so. I remember early on, it was very early on, I'd done a piece of work and it unexpectedly got some high profile national media coverage, but all the wrong reasons. And I remember my chief executive at the time saying it is much better to be criticised and attacked for doing the right thing than to be praised for doing the wrong thing. So always do what you think is right, regardless of regardless of what people think about it. And I think that sense of doing the right thing rather than the thing that will just get you profile is really important, because particularly in this area, we're trying to improve people's life chances, and it is really important. And so doing the right thing, even if it's not popular, is really important. I guess another thing, and I suppose it's not so much someone said, but it feels like the culture that I came to the West Midlands Combined Authority for, and I found it to be really true, is that it doesn't matter if you try something and you fail, but it does matter if you don't try. And I think that's a great culture to have, and it's part of devolution and testing things out. But I'd like to think that that's something that I would do with my team, with my organisation, with my kids. I think it's a great bit of advice, actually. If you're not failing at something, you're probably not trying hard enough to see if you can win at something.
Absolutely.
And so it's a bit scary, but I think it's not a
and
bad
authenticity.
Bit of advice.
I think that's so critical today. It's what allows us to thrive, to enjoy what it is that we're doing. We're not trying to fit in to be like everybody else. I think that's where great leadership comes from too, and something when I was in education that I really tried to emphasize more than anything to my students at that time was just follow what you love doing, because it will lead to the right answers, eventually. So yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, definitely like that. Try. You've got to be there to. You kind of got to be in it to win it.
You do,
isn't
it?
You
do, yeah. And I just think if I think about some of the really persistent challenges in the region, like if they were easy to fix, there are lots of bright people. We might have done this earlier. It's the fact that we've got to do something different. Just doing more of the same is just going to get us more of the same. And so you've got to be creative, and you've got to try things that you haven't done before, and you might not have had the courage to do beforehand. But there's the cost is too high if we don't tackle some of these things. So,
and it's good for business,
Yeah, I think the easy stuff's been
absolutely.
done.
This diversity, inclusion, like really pushing for that within our own teams. People who think differently, bring different ideas to the table. I always think it's great. It change is scary in the beginning for everybody, but I think there's lots of research, lots of data now that's proving this is good for business, so. And even when I think about hospitality and tourism, I remember speaking to a chef saying, we had a really small kitchen, really small team. We were worried about bringing an apprentice in. We didn't think that we had enough time to spend. He said, but it was only when we got into it that we realised actually the questions that they were asking us about why we did the things that we did allowed us to think creatively about what they were doing as well. And so he said the whole team changed because of this person coming into the team. They were so different,
That's brilliant. I mean, the people you work with are really important, aren't they? They're important for your quality of life, but they're important for what you can do. When I worked with Andy Street, who was the previous mayor, I remember someone had given him a compliment how great he was, and he said, I'm just one person, like I can only do what one person can do. It's the team you have with you that enables you to really transform things. And we've got a great team at the Combined Authority. I like the fact that there's different skills, different experience, because you don't want lots of me. One of me is just enough. But actually having people with different skills, different experience, different perspectives, so you spot your blind spots, that kind of different passions and interests. And I think that makes for really good life anyway, but absolutely fabulous teams.
Fabulous. So what are your kind of hopes for skills and change at West Midlands now and also in the future?
Yeah, so I think it's a really exciting time at the minute. So the new government has come in talking about a lot more devolution, and that further skills devolution, and that's really exciting because we think we've done great things with the adult education budget. Of course, still more to do, but I guess we increasingly find that you kind of come up against the limits of things. So it can do great things at 19, but how do you stop needing to do them at 19? Could you sort them earlier? You talk to employers about skills, but don't really have any leverage over apprenticeships. How can we extend that on skills? But for me, I think the further devolution is also about more ability to influence and connect other parts, other policy areas. So we're looking at sort of devolution of employment support. So how do we put employment support with skills so that you help people get a good job and then progress in their career? Because skills in itself, skills investment is fabulous. You won't get a stronger proponent for it, but it doesn't solve everything. It's actually when you support businesses and support people and help them get easily and safely from where they live to where they work. When you do all of those things together, you can make a real difference. So I'm really excited for the potential of devolution over the next few years, and I think you'll be hearing a lot more from mayors and combined authorities. So it's one to watch, I think.
And how can local businesses get involved with the work that you do? And I guess there's lots of entry points for them, but is there any good points of contact, that they could make?
Yeah. I mean, you can only do the work in a combined authority with all of your partners. But in itself, I mean, it's a combination of 7 local authorities. It starts from a partnership model. I'm thinking particularly of the mayor's commitment around his youth plan. So we need to partner with those organisations that are in touch with young people, that support them, that educate them, give them mental health support, but really importantly with employers who are prepared to take a chance on a young person. So the mayor's made a commitment to work with employers to create 20,000 work placements for young people. Well, just as you've said, Kirsty, if a young person you think could make a difference to your business, or if you think it can't, but you'd like to help them, I think you'd be surprised, because I think they can, then get in touch. You can get in touch directly with the mayor, drop a line to the combined authority, get in touch with me, social media, email, whatever. We'd just love to work with you. This has got to be a collective effort if we're really going to change the dial for our young people.
That. And I like the stepping stones, because it's it's taking one step at a time. That work experience, volunteering as well, as another thing that we're finding a big push for up here in Scotland too, which is exciting. And so I think all of those things help people to have the confidence to see that this can really work,
Yeah, and I think employers are then surprised. Yes. I think they go in thinking they're going to help young people. It is helpful, but actually getting a young, energised, skilled young person coming into your business, lots of employers have wanted to keep them on because they offer something that they don't have. It's good kind of talent pipeline, isn't it? You're not just doing someone a service. This makes really good business sense. It's good for the bottom line, and we're hoping we can help more businesses.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've heard as well from other guests is that there's a kind of feeling of investing in the wider community. It's the shared talent resource. So even if someone doesn't stay with you forever and you've invested in that apprenticeship, it's they're moving on, and there's still growth from that, because the chances are you're going to employ someone that they've put through training too. So I think that comes back to that regional economic growth strategy, and again, the data informing that it's okay that these changes are going to happen. We will come through it, the other side of it. And what next for you, Fiona? What's next in your step?
Despite saying this is a really exciting time to be at Combined Authority, and it is, and I'm really hoping to carry on working with Combined Authorities, I'm moving on at the end of the month. So I'm going to be Chief Exec of the Skills Federation. Some of your listeners might know it as FIS. I think the exciting thing for me is it's another step in the journey. So I've done quite a lot on place. One of the things I'm really excited about, particularly with government going to set out an industrial strategy, is to think about sectors and industry. There's been some real challenges around employer investment in skills, employer utilisation of skills, but lots of employers also saying that the skills system doesn't meet their needs. And I think being able to think about the role of sectors, of industry, in really being able to step up to the plate and make a difference on skills policy too. I'm hoping there'll be a great combination of being able to do that in some places and work with some of my CA colleagues at the same time across the country. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm just adding something extra.
Oh, that's great, though. So we wish you well in your new role at Skills Federation. And you've also been involved in the Youth Futures Board as well, haven't you, Fiona?
Yeah, so that's really exciting for me. So Youth Futures Foundation is the What Works Centre for Youth Unemployment. It does some fabulous work in being able to both understand the challenge and understand what works in tackling it. That's been really important for me in my role at the Combined Authority, but it's just fabulous to see the work that they're doing. Loads of great resources for employers, for policymakers. One of the things I really like is their youth participation work, how young people are empowered and involved at every level, which really gives an authenticity back to our earlier point, so that it's not just a bunch of us oldies saying, oh, we think you need this, but actually young people saying what their aspirations are and how we can help them. And that's fabulous. It's a brilliant organisation.
Peer support too.
Fantastic. It's good to hear that they're using their lived experience to actually inform how best to approach their futures, rather than, as you say, being done to them. It's been working with them and working alongside them to get to that. That's been fantastic. It's been a really interesting conversation, Fiona. Thank you for your time.
Lots of dots getting joined up, I have to say, and the bigger picture stuff, which is exciting.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many different angles to look at it, isn't there? So many different lenses, so many different stakeholders. I think it's been great to stay in my career on working on skills, but to look at it through so many different dimensions, and hopefully adding to it at each stage. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
I'm sure you will continue to.
That's great. And you're sort of joining it all like a spider's web, really. I see it, Fiona, of all these different elements and all these connections and bringing it all together. So I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing what happens with the new role, and also looking forward to see what happens with your legacy of the work that you've done there at West Midlands. So that'll be really good to see that transition too.
Yes, no, it's exciting. I'm sure there are great things ahead. I think the devolution and combined authorities are just getting going. So I think there's some exciting things to watch there.
It's been brilliant to hear your side of it and how we can apply that to other places as well. It's really useful, and I hope it's been useful for our listeners.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Fiona.
It's a pleasure. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to the Skillsminer podcast. You can find more episodes on our YouTube channel or subscribe on Spotify to make sure you keep in the loop.